everyone. It's Anthony Allen Ramos. All right, David Ambroz is an accomplished executive and a child welfare advocate. But before his success, David grew up homeless and faced many challenges living on the streets in New York City. David is telling his story in his memoir, which is called A Place Called Home, and I am so happy to be chatting with him right now. David, how are you?
I'm fantastic. And thanks for taking the time to hear a little bit about my story.
It's an important one and it's an inspiring one, but how are you feeling, at this moment? The book is out now. People are finding it. People are reading it. You really put it all out there.
Yeah.
How's it feel to kind of just have your life story out there for everyone to read?
I feel like I'm coming out again.
Right.
I think I'm coming out again. It feels, if anyone's listening, watching, it feels like that all over again, but in a way where I've been embraced. I have had quite a life, and I think of it like Forrest Gump meets hillbilly elegy and crashes into Precious. And a lot of people in my life didn't know, so they're
Right.
learning more about me and what I survived and where I come from and why I kind of operate the way that I do.
It is so interesting because, I knew you when you were at ABC. You're obviously now at Amazon and you were at ABC Disney doing amazing work. And I obviously had no idea. And I think that's probably the case for so many people. We see people that are
Yeah,
successful doing great things, and we really have no idea what life was like getting to this point.
absolutely.
What I think is so interesting is that you have found success and you're doing such great stuff, but the challenges that you faced as a kid were
Yeah.
unbelievable, and to read about them, it's heartbreaking. But how did you? I mean, to give people context, you were homeless in New York City. Your
Yeah.
mother struggled with mental illness. You had two siblings, have two siblings, and at 4 years old, there was a point when you said you might not make it. And then
Yeah.
you tell a story about, begging for money and people ignoring you. Kind of set it up a little bit because
Yeah.
it's
It's a
tough.
lot. So my story began 40 plus years ago. My family at the time, I was around four, was living in Grand Central and Port Authority and other public places, but we were swept out. And that night, my family, brother, sister, and my mom started walking. And because of my mom's mental health issues, we weren't going anywhere. And we slowly started to freeze. And very quickly, I realized that we weren't necessarily going to make it through the night alive. And so the story opens with my family and what that was like and how we did survive that night by the skin of our teeth. And then it just takes you through what homelessness is like. For 11 years, my family struggled with just making it out of poverty. And then we went into foster care. But the entire time of homelessness was an insane adventure with fear every other minute,
Mhm.
um, that I got to learn from, and honestly made me the person I am today, hyper aware of what goes on and how we talk about people. And I'll just give you, talking to GLAAD of all people, the conversation in Los Angeles around the homeless, we're talking about cleaning it up. And the it is my family.
Right.
And I think words matter. And I think we've lost our compassion for people that are suffering out of frustration. And we have to get that back because we can't lift people out of these situations with fists.
And I think, when you talk about that compassion, and I think there's so much stigma still and shame
Yeah.
that people associate with being homeless. And it is something that does affect so many LGBTQ people. Why do you
Oh, yeah.
think that, people look at things like that in that lens of shame or stigma?
Yeah. And you're right. It does disproportionately affect our community. When I was growing up in the 80s in New York and we were working our way through shelters, it was in the middle of the AIDS epidemic. And all around me were abandoned young men who were dying. And society was struggling, if at all, to try and figure out what to do. I think today the number is somewhere between 18 and 20% of the kids in foster care are queer.
Hmm.
And it's double-ish the national population of what we are. I think that happens for a number of reasons. One is we're not beloved by our families. We are suffering disproportionately from families that can't accept us, and or we feel unaccepted and seek safety and community. Those numbers have been pretty consistent for my entire life. And that's a damn shame. I think we need more queer foster parents. We need more queer advocacy around kids that are experiencing homelessness in foster care. We have to just be much more an active community, not just about important topics like marriage, but what's happening to the kids that are the most vulnerable, that don't vote, that don't live on the coast, that
Right.
may be in a system that's struggling to just meet their basic needs, never mind their sexuality.
And we'll talk about your life as a foster parent too soon. But before we get there, I think, you talk about, being homeless and then,
Mhm.
getting into foster care. And I know that school really was kind of a safe haven and a turning point for you. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think, for you, getting off, getting a meal and getting to learn every day
Yeah.
was so important.
Yeah, schools have become everything in our society, haven't they? They are the place where we give healthcare, we give food. A lot of kids, more than half the kids in the country, are at schools with Title I, which means they get free lunch. They're getting free lunch because their families are in poverty. 8.6, 8.4, 8.6 million kids live in poverty in this country. And yet, in a presidential debate, we haven't spoken the word child poverty, the phrase, since 1999. We
Wow.
talk about coal miners, an important topic, but there's a couple thousand of them. We have abandoned this population to live in the darkness right in front of us. And so I think our indifference to suffering has manifested in particular in public schools. They are the ground zero for all of our societal ills. And then we're shocked when teachers are leaving the field or not coming into the field. So I think school was so important to me for the basic needs that you mentioned. It was warm. It
Mhm.
was not, I wasn't suffering from whatever exposure that was going on with the weather. Um, my only meal sometimes would be what I ate that day in school. And I wasn't often in school for about 12, 13 years of my life until I went into foster care. I don't think I went to an entire year ever. But when I was there, it was the place where I was the most safe. And unfortunately, adults didn't do what they should do, which is very clearly my family was suffering from abuse, but the interventions were just enough to keep me alive. And for that, I'm grateful. But I do think we should look at schools and really support them, but also hold them to strong account for the care they're supposed to have for these children.
How do you it's still, even hearing you talk about this, it's so fascinating, because I think people today, um, you know, think it's impossible to achieve their dreams, or, the career that they want, or anything like
Sure.
that, because but you literally had everything stacked against you, and somehow you found a way to get there. How did you, I mean, what's the key? Like, what would you say to people that is kind of the underlying message about how you were able to literally take a really difficult
Yeah.
situation and then still end up in a really good, successful, meaningful place?
Well, thank you for that. I first want to say that the unique circumstances of my life are not the way we should design a program. I think about poverty and I think about like a human being drowning off the side of my boat. And we're all on this boat and we reach down to help this person that's drowning and we lift him out of the water and they go, and they gasp for breath. And then we let them go and they
Right.
fall back into the water and they're drowning again. And then we come along and pull them out for a moment. That's how we treat people in poverty. We need to lift them out of the whole water and put their body in the lifeboat with us and not do this incremental approach. People are messy. People are messy. We are messy. And we have to embrace that if we're going to end poverty in this country. The stats are terribly consistent over my lifetime, and we can do better. What do I attribute my success to? Definitely my mom. Despite everything, my mom inculcated deep in all of her kids a value towards education, even as we did not go to school. She would say things like, "You're going to be a Supreme Court justice," and things of that nature. And that was very meaningful to me. She
Hmm.
taught me to read. Shelters for me were places like the library, which were vital in keeping my family alive. So I learned a value early of education. I also really love books because it was a different world I got to escape into than the one that I was experiencing every day. And then finally, I always saw it as a way out. And the first chapter ends with this idea of a young boy realizing that he did not want to die.
Mhm.
And how do you get out of the bottom? And the only way that I understood over my years was I had to go to college. I had to get out of this. And the
Mhm.
only way I would do that. And my brother and sister, all three of us have graduate degrees because we are each other's bookends. We kept each other upright and on the path, even though it was really hard. And I credit my brother and sister as well.
So impressive, and I mean to hear that all three of you came out of that circumstance doing so well. You talked about books and the impact that they had
Hmm.
on on you. There is with thinking about your journey coming out and accepting who you are, I think right now there's such a conversation about banning these books that are a
Hmm.
little bit more LGBTQ inclusive.
Yeah,
Which I think for me, even thinking about like if I had access to a young adult novel that was a little bit more
inclusive.
LGBTQ, that would have meant so much
Yeah,
to me. I would love for you to talk about that because I think it's a conversation and it's an important one that kids need to have that option to
absolutely.
themselves.
Yeah, when I went into foster care, they didn't. I couldn't get placed because I was queer, and they knew that right away. And they placed me in a delinquency facility, and I was immediately assaulted, and it was violent as one. I it's in the book, but
Mhm.
it was incredibly violent, and I was pulled apart because of my sexual orientation. I think invisibility is a profound thing. We have made, and they're trying to make us invisible, and we won't go down like that. I refuse to be made invisible again. That's why partly I wrote the book, is that a kid like myself, homeless or queer or in foster care, any of these experiences can see themselves reflected in it and realize that there is a way out, even though it's really hard sometimes. So I think the banning of books speaks to the last gasp of these folks who are trying to squelch what is inevitably a rise of equality that we still have to fight for. But I am so bullish that we are going to win that fight.
Mhm.
And that's part of why I'm putting my story out there. We just can't be made invisible again. And this book, I hope, finds its way into the hands of all those queer kids
Mhm.
in foster care or homeless or candidly just experiencing tough times wherever they are.
I think, yeah, I was thinking about that. I was like, I hope this book ends up in a library or a school that someone can read it, years from
Yeah.
now or a couple weeks from now, hopefully. But
Yeah.
I want you flash forward to now. I mentioned, you're working at Amazon,
Yeah.
Disney, ABC, but I want to talk about you being a foster parent. I mean, what a way to pay it forward in your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that 20% of kids in foster care are queer. And I
Mhm.
think as a people, we could do a better job of stepping up and not thinking to ourselves, this is why I can't, but starting the question with, what can I do? And it
Right.
may not be to foster, it may be to mentor, it may be just to pay attention, ask a question of local government. We all can name the Supreme Court justices, but we can't name the person who runs foster care in our county. Um, these are 424,000 children that do not vote, and they need us to pay attention. So put down the TikTok and dive into your local child welfare. I did not intend to foster. I had such a traumatic experience for the most part, with one exception. I had one foster family that was beautiful, that I did not want to be part of that system. I wanted to change it, but
Right.
from afar. And what happened was I just started in a mentorship relationship with a young man, and he came to me through my sister, who's a social worker. And I fell in love. I just fell in love with this individual who had all the potential in the world. And I saw the pain, and
Mhm.
I felt like I knew what he was going through and what he might achieve with the right love and direction. And so a mentorship became a deep mentorship, became a foster parent relationship. He's doing great. He's in grad school in New York studying artificial intelligence. He's
Wow.
truly the love of my life. And he has three brothers that I also work with. I'm not their foster parent, but they're doing great too. One of whom's already in college. Um, I'm just very proud of what he's accomplished. I don't think every foster kid should at all feel like they have to become a foster parent or a social worker. We shouldn't put that burden on them. But all those listening that can or could think about it should. And if you can't, the next question is, what can I do? And that's where I hope we get to. I think queer people have so much to give in terms of empathy. And this population desperately needs that empathy, but more than empathy, we need action.
Yeah,
And
and
I think we
mentorship
should do that.
Completely. And mentorship is such a good thing to bring up because I
Yeah.
even think about like, people that have reached out to me and I'm like, wait, you actually like, I'm like, you want to hear what I have to like, I mean, you forget that
Yeah,
people really sometimes just need a little bit of
absolutely.
help and guidance. And I think that's really important. Before we wrap up, like I said, I really hope that all people, not just queer people, find
Yeah.
this book. What's the takeaway and the message that you hope that people, when they read it, they close the book
Oh,
and they think to themselves,
yeah. I I am sharing some of the most vulnerable parts of my soul with the public, not because I want to be stared at, but because I think for so long it's been like if you drive on freeways in Los Angeles or even anywhere, you see a car accident and you have two simultaneous emotions. One, you're like, I hope everyone's okay. But you also are like, why are they slowing down traffic? Were they on their phone? You're grumpy and
"Hmm,
compassionate. And then you keep driving because clearly someone else is going to come along and fix this.
right,
No one's coming.
right,
And so, what I want us to believe is that we as individuals have the power and responsibility to help vulnerable people. And not only that, there's some sort of weird thing in our world. And I think maybe queer people are a little bit past it because of our success in securing rights, but we could do big things together. And there's this weird thing in our society right now. We're proud of building a bridge. We sent a man to the moon. There should be no homeless people.
right."
There should be no homeless children. There should be no queer children that are abused in state facilities. We sent a person to the moon. We can damn well figure out how to do these things. And that is something that has evaporated from our collective souls and consciousnesses. And I want my story to inspire people to believe that we can do big things together because no one is coming to do CPR on that car accident victim on the side of the highway. It's you. It's you who's listening to this and will see this. And it's me. And I hope you're inspired by my story to do something. And if you're not sure what to do, the afterword is a love letter to change policy. And then, of course, my website. I have lots of ideas and there's lots of great people doing good work. We can do this and we can help every kid that needs our help.
Come together, take action, be
Yeah.
compassionate, all of those things. Well, David, I so appreciate you sharing your story, and I think so many others will really connect with it as well. And just a reminder, everyone, you can find A Place Called Home, which is David's memoir. It's available now wherever you can find your books online, in stores, and beyond. But David, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.